excited. So listen, let's jump into it. Um, Erin, one of the things that I think is important when we talk about salary conversations, right, and salary negotiations is how do we know, like, and I'm interested from your perspective as a poker expert, how do we know when we've got enough leverage to kind of go into that negotiation conversation? Have you got any tips for us on that?
Yeah. Let me step back for just a moment because I play poker, but I am not a professional poker player. I run a company where we teach women how to play poker because we truly believe that the skills and strategies of this game enable women to accelerate their careers, both in their professional lives, as well as get what they want and what they should be negotiating for in their personal lives. And so with poker, there are so many correlations between the gameplay and being able to negotiate well and know when you're in a position of strength or a position of weakness. And so from the poker table, you make your decisions with every round of play. And Meggie, let me ask you, are you a poker player? Have you played the game?
I'm very bad, Erin. I'm very bad.
That is okay, because I will tell you that 95% of the women who sit down at the table with us have never played or played as children and really don't remember, and that is okay. And we actually prefer that because then we're starting with a clean slate. But from the poker standpoint, you receive 2 hole cards, so those are your starting cards, and then everyone around the table also has their 2 hole cards, which you keep hidden, and that's really your negotiating power. That is how you're going to make your decisions. As the gameplay rotates around the table, additional cards are turned over in the middle that everyone plays with. And it's a matching game in the simplest sense. The way that you know when you have leverage is how good your cards are. So let's just say you got pocket aces. That's called the nuts. That's the best 2 cards you could be dealt at the beginning of a poker game, and you'd be really happy. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to show that on your face or with your body language, but you would know that you were in, at that moment, a very strong position, no matter where you sit at the table. Now, this is where it gets complicated. It's very similar to real negotiation, is you have your starting hand and you make a decision how you're going to play from there, but you also have to think about your position. So your seat at the table, or in the real world, who are you negotiating with? Is this a one-off vendor that you're just going to have one contract with? Or is this your boss where you are actually going to have hopefully a very long-standing relationship with? So your position at the table matters, and it gives you varying levels of strength. The third thing you want to think about is your chip stack. And so when we are teaching poker, we are playing with play money. So there is no gambling, there's no real money transacting. But despite that, the value of your chip stack helps you decide whether you should be making the bet or not making the bet, or how big of a bet you should be making. That is also similar to when you're negotiating in the real world, is that you bring a certain amount of leverage, of competency, of experience, education, network, your past successes. Those are all your chip stack. That is what you're going to use to have this negotiation with your boss, a colleague, a vendor, whoever it may be. Your husband, if you need him to get the trash out. So that's a very helpful skill.
Absolutely. And I'm really keen to hear from everyone in the audience today. If you have questions about poker or negotiation or salary, let us know in the chat so we can address those for you as well. So Erin, I'm really interested in how we translate some of those skills. You mentioned, like, you don't want to give too much away in your face. Communication and non-verbal communication is key, isn't it, in any negotiation?
It really is. We have several sayings at Poker Power, but one of them is thinking like a poker player. And yes, even having a poker face is a skill worth adding to your toolkit. And we talk a lot about adding skills and strategies to a woman's toolkit in a professional setting. And we want you to stack those skills. And we truly believe by learning the game of poker, and even more importantly, by practicing the game of poker, you will start to stack those skills and have them in your toolkit. But that poker face, that serves you every single day of your life. And it can be really difficult. Each one of us has a different level of boisterousness and whether we really express ourselves with our nonverbal cues. But at the poker table, it isn't even just your face. It might be a tick, a cough that you do, or something that you say every single time you get those pocket aces. Astute players, and so in the real world again, because I always make the translation, the person you are negotiating against, or even the team you're negotiating with, they're going to start to pick up on those if they're paying attention. And that is really critical. At the poker table, the very best players are always seeing what's going on. They may not even be playing that hand. They may have folded quite early. They're still paying attention because it's that accumulation of understanding the nonverbal tells and the verbal tells that adds to your strategy and how you're going to play.
And I think it's so interesting, right? There's a lot of synergies between poker and when you're negotiating for your salary or a promotion or something like that, right? Because Erin, one of the things that is important in poker is, it's a game of strategy, right? And you got to be, if you want to win, you got to be aware of what cards are out there. You got to know the deck and you got to kind of know the moves. And it's the same thing when it comes to your career. So you got a couple of options. If you want a pay raise or something like that, you can give it 5 minutes or maybe 30 minutes, prepare ahead of time. It'll maybe be okay. You're a very smart human. Everyone here today is a high achiever. You probably be okay. But actually, we're not looking for an outcome that's okay. For all of you, I know that you're looking for a career that is exceptional and that you have huge aspirations, right? So if you're looking for a significant pay increase, if you're looking to climb that ladder quite quickly, you have to put in quality preparation, similar to becoming a great poker player. You've got to learn the rules of the game. And the reality is we don't have to like it. I don't like the gender pay gap, and that's why I started PepTalkHer. I don't like that we earn less than men. I don't like that women of color earn even less. However, I know that that's the case, and it's probably going to be the case for a few more decades. And so with that information, how can I best strategize to prepare for how I'm perceived in the workplace and to prepare to have these salary conversations? Erin, you've had a super impressive career. What have you seen, very successful women who strategically play the career game, frankly? What have you seen them do that you think we could all learn from?
Yeah, there's a long list and there's a shorter list. So I'll start with the shorter list because there really are differences. One of the things, just to make one more thing about poker, is we actually know that very few women play this game and even fewer play it professionally. But women who work in finance and tech, when you're talking to C-suite level women in both of those industries, and you ask the question that I asked you, do you play poker? The higher percentage of women will say yes when they come from those industries. So there is something happening. Now, part of it could just be that these women are used to being in very male-dominated spaces and they've taken to the game because it's a male-dominated game. There are also, as I'm sure most of the audience knows, there is a component of math that is involved with poker to play it at a higher level. And so women who have gravitated to those industries may be predisposed to do well in those areas. But what we also know is that you have to, one, be willing to take risk. And risk, and when I say risk, what I really mean is a calculated risk, not a crazy jump out of the airplane kind of risk, even though some of us like to do that. But the risk where you've evaluated and analyzed your situation, and you've really started to take inventory of what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And whether, I was 22 years old and I was in my first job, which was actually being an editorial assistant at a publishing house, because I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to work in the publishing industry, or, fast forward 30 years later, and I work at, a very large investment and fintech company, and Poker Power is one of the portfolio companies. I have had to take risks all the way along. And if anyone who knows my story, I also took the most enormous risk, which was to leave the workforce and raise my two daughters. And so I took a very long pause, about 8 years, and then had to come back and really claw my way back to get the respect, get the opportunities. All of those things have required me to get comfortable with risk. And I am predisposed to that. That's something I am in most areas of my life. But what I have found by playing poker is that I get to practice it. And I think that's what's really missing, is that so often women in particular, we're told, be confident, ask for more money, do these things. But no one really gives us a setting or a safe space where we can practice them. And that's what we do at Poker Power. When you are playing poker with us, we push you, we force you to make aggressive bets, which can be really, really challenging for anyone to do. But we find in our classes, in class 1, we don't allow what's called limping. And limping means is that you're just putting in enough that you get to keep playing and see the next card. We don't allow it. It's a no limping rule right from day 1. That applies to life. There is no limping in life once you're a poker player, or if you're a woman who really wants to accelerate her career. You're going to fail. You're going to be told no. I can't tell you how many hands of poker I have lost in the last 2 years. What you do after you lose is what matters, because the outcome is the outcome. What matters is that you step back and evaluate. So in a game of poker, most poker players who are successful are actually keeping track. They know the hands they've played. They know what has happened in that game. Our careers are the same way. I've actually heard, Meggie, you talk about you have an app and you have to keep track in your app of all the things you should brag about. And I mean, that's a brilliant idea, because it's only once or twice a year that we actually get to have the brag conversations with our bosses. And it is hard to remember. So keep track of them, pull them up, have the data, know that you've been tied to a revenue increase. I've always advised women who have asked me, when they're looking at careers or they're looking at changing in a different direction, always tie yourself to the money. You want to own the P&L. You want to be the person who is controlling the budget. And if you're at a level in your career where you don't get to actually own the P&L, you want to understand the P&L. There is no excuse, and I really do believe this, there's no excuse for a woman not to understand the numbers of the business. So seek someone out, seek out a mentor who's going to help you understand those. We feel so strongly at Peak Six, which is the parent company for Poker Power, that we need to get women comfortable allocating money. And that starts at the poker table, because you do it with every single hand.
Well, and the cool thing that I love about poker and what you're doing with Poker Power is that if you win or lose the poker game, it doesn't matter. Do you know, like, the world doesn't stop spinning, your life's not over. And it's so important to practice pushing your boundaries, being courageous in what you want, bluffing, negotiating, being aggressive maybe in your kind of strategy in a low consequence environment, because it just doesn't matter if you win or you lose. And what I love about this is why I just really love what Erin and the team is doing, because it's strengthening the muscle of your brain around negotiating. And if that is very strong because you've been doing poker or you've been doing practices with your BFF or your colleague or your mentor, that's powerful, because when you go into the boardroom or you go into a job interview or you get on the phone with a recruiter, you got a strong muscle up here that says, I've got this. I can ask the question. I can do this. The outcome I'm okay with, I'm okay to have this courageous conversation. And I think that that's really important. I always say to people, Erin, I don't want your first negotiation to be with your boss. I don't want that, because it's a lot, and it's like kind of scary. Let me know in the chat. If I said to you, you had to negotiate for a raise in the next 20 minutes, how would it make you feel? Let me know one word that comes up for you in the chat, because I'd love to get a sense of how we all experience this concept of negotiation. Because if we understand our gut reaction to that, and people are saying, wow, nervous, anxious, thank you for sending that through privately. And that's so normal. And that's the cool thing about poker, right? Because you can kind of dissipate some of those anxieties that come up, because it's a safe space, because it is a game, but it's a game that teaches you strategy. And it's a game, Erin, I know that is very powerful in the corporate world, right? So I just think, scared. You're not alone there, Jackie. Don't worry. And one of the other things I want to touch on, Erin, and I think this is relevant for a lot of people as well, you mentioned, and we hear this a lot at PepTalkHer, you mentioned that, you took time off out of the workplace, right? And one of the things I hear a lot is a lot of anxiety and a reduced confidence coming back to work after a leave of absence, whether it's for caring responsibilities, illness, or something else. Do you have any tips for people who want to kind of overcome that?
Yeah, so the first thing is, before you decide you are leaving, for whatever the reason, you have to have a very strong network that you're departing from. And I have always worked hard to build the relationships, whether it's within my company, within my clients, even broader than, schoolmates, all those sorts of things. You're going to need these people. So one, you want to leave on the very best of terms. Two, it's okay to be uncertain when you're coming back. But what's not okay is that you lose complete touch. You cannot just go wherever you're going, whether it's a baby, whether it's an older parent you're taking care of, you have to stay connected. Because whether you go back to the same business or the same position, or you make an entire career change, you're going to need the people that you left for the referrals. You're going to need them to help you, get the network so you know where the job opportunities are. So always cultivating the network is incredibly
100%.
important. I think the
Yeah.
other thing is that you have to recognize that you're probably not at the top of the game. And I'll tell you a funny story, which I can admit now, but I couldn't probably a few years ago. One of the roles that I took on was in esports. And so Peak Six owns Evil Geniuses, which is a legendary esports team. And when I was offered to take the job at esports as their strategy advisor, I had to Google the word esports because my kids don't play video games. I'm not familiar with the industry. And literally from a Friday when I said yes to that role to the Monday when I showed up in Seattle, I had to learn I literally was up for 48 hours straight learning everything I could about this industry. And that's okay. It is okay to not be the expert, but it's not okay to not stay connected. I've done the Wall Street Journal. Even before I was in college, I was getting the Wall Street Journal. I've always cared about the markets. There's certain things that you don't want to lose touch with. So it's the people and then it's your field of interest or the industry that you're going into.
I love this. This is great advice. We've had some great questions through, and feel free to send them through to me as a DM if you'd like to keep them anonymous. A lot of people, Erin, are asking about, so we've got a great question that's come through from Vicky. She's done particularly well in this interview, so congratulations. But how do you negotiate your salary when it's your dream job? Because do you kind of feel like, well, the employer has all the power, they're a big fancy company. And I want to address this for all of us because, there's some other people who've sent me private messages saying they want to negotiate, but they're discouraged because they're worried about how they're going to be perceived. And I wonder, Vicky, if this is coming up for you too. And we know, and again, this isn't fair, it's not equitable, I'm not happy about it, but we do know that when women negotiate, sometimes we are perceived differently, right? Than, say, for example, if a man negotiates. We could talk about this all day because of societal perceptions and history and, generations of unconscious bias. However, there is a way that you can have a conversation. And we know that when women negotiate collectively, we are incredibly successful. And for better or worse, people actually respond really well when women frame their requests in a collective manner, right? So yes, you're advocating for yourself, but when you can tie that ask back to sort of a collective win or a collective goal for the company, we know that your success will go up. And I think as well, to the people sending me DMs, sometimes there's a fear that having a negotiation about salary has to be combative or aggressive. And in fact, to Erin's earlier point, it actually doesn't have to be like that, right? It's actually a discussion. The technical definition of negotiation is that it's a discussion trying to get to an agreement. That's it. It's actually not a fight or a battle, even though we build it up to be like that, right? So what I want you to do is, to Erin's point, I need you to track those successes, whether you use the PepTalkHer app or something else. You've got to bring data to the table, right? You've got to have feedback. I don't want you preparing the night before. I need you to be tracking these things throughout the year, even if it's just once a month. Just jump through the to-do list or the calendar and be like, not very interesting. Oh, yeah, that's right. The CFO emailed me. Okay, I'll write that down. I'll track that. That's right. I started the intern program. That's right. I got us a story in Harper's Bazaar or whatever the case may be. I did an interview on CNBC, whatever you did. Write those things down, because then at performance review time, you're going to have like this brag book of stuff that you can use to say, hey, listen, as you know, I've had a wonderful year. Here's some of the achievements that I've managed to contribute to the business. And I'd really love to discuss my compensation moving forward, given the impact that I've been having on the business consistently. So I want you to frame these conversations in a way that shows that you're adding value to the P&L, as Erin said, so that it's kind of a no-brainer for the person on the other side of the table. And also being clear that they might say no. So how are you prepared to pivot? And this is, something you'll learn in poker too. Like sometimes your strategy goes out the window. So you got to be ready with different cards. It's the same in a salary negotiation. Maybe there's no more money, genuinely, right? Like possibly the company's had a bad year. Can you get more paid time off? Can you negotiate a 4-day week? Like thinking outside the square. Do you think that's helpful, Erin, to be solutions oriented?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that we learn with poker is, as you go along as you're getting better at the game, is that there are really 3 levels of thinking, and they directly apply to negotiation. And so the first one is you're asking yourself, what do I have? So in poker, that's your 2 hold cards. Where do you stand at this moment in the game? That's a very simple way of thinking for a negotiation, because you don't just want to think about what does Aaron bring to the table? What am I offering as I'm selling myself, to this position or this promotion? The second thing you want to think about is, what does the opponent in poker have? In the case of negotiation, it's your counterparty. It's the manager, it's the boss, it's the recruiter, it's the client that you're negotiating with. So you want to know what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses? Because if you can start to figure out in your head what their value is and what they're going to most highly want to get from you, and then you also already know what you're willing to bring, you're widening the discussion. And then the third level of thinking in poker is thinking, what does my opponent think I have? And so that's really the most complex thinking, is you know what you have, you think you know what they have, and then you also think you may know what they think you have. And I know that starts to get like a play on words, but that's where you want to get in the negotiation, because you want to be able to bring more to the table. Because unlike poker, which is a zero-sum game, there's going to be one winner in every game of poker. That's not negotiate. That's the worst kind of negotiation, is someone feels like they've won and someone feels like they've lost.
Right.
You don't want that. You want the conversation, all the points you brought to the table. When it comes to salary, it's not just your comp. It's, as Meggie said, it's being able to work 1 day at home or 5 days at home, as it may be now, being able to have extra vacation. That doesn't actually cost the company money if there's a budget constraint. Being able to go on sabbatical after 3 or 4 years of working for a longer vacation. Having a day where you're able to have flexibility just so you can get your doctor's appointments and your accountant's appointments and those things done. All of those are negotiations that don't cost money to the company. So you don't just want to think about the actual dollars and cents. You really want to think about everything that matters to you, and actually more importantly to them, so you can get them to say yes.
Look, I couldn't agree more. And I think, Erin, what you're saying is that we can strategize ahead of time for a negotiation, just as we can with poker. And, sometimes we think, oh, I don't know what's going to happen in this negotiation. I'm so nervous. I don't know what they're going to say. Actually, I can tell you what they're going to say right now. They're either going to say yes, they're going to say no, or they're going to say maybe. Like, that's it. Those are the options. And we can grab out a pen and paper now. We can get out Post-it notes and we can brainstorm. Yes, you can have a raise, but not 20K, only 10K. Yes, you can have a raise, but in 6 months. No, you can't. This is why. No, you can't right now. We can think about those things. And like, it's possible for you to brainstorm them ahead of time. If they say maybe, I'll ask to have another conversation in a month. I'm going to ask for extra PTO. So, and the power of doing this is it helps our brain. Because our brain doesn't like the unknown. And hands up if if you prefer to be a control freak like me. I'd like to be in control. I know it's not possible, but I like to be. And it's the same with negotiations. But actually, brainstorm it out. Sit with a friend, your cousin, your bestie, your mentor, and just kind of be like, okay, what are the possibilities here? If this happens, what am I going to say? If this happens, what am I going to say? Especially practice the bad scenarios, because I want you to have your best poker face on. I want you to be prepared so that you don't have to cry in a meeting. I hear this a lot from clients at PepTalkHer. They get really emotional and they feel like they don't want to cry in a business meeting because they don't, want that to kind of impact how they're perceived. And that's really tough to do if you're, I'm a fairly emotional person, but something that I have learned to do over the years is I practice those emotional reactions ahead of time to train my brain so that it knows it might be coming. And if it does, this is how I'm going to react. And, Vicky was talking about she's been offered, hopefully it sounds like, a really great job, and she's just trying to figure out how does she negotiate that. And it's the same thing, Vicky, for you. I would be preparing some language that accepts the job and shows that you're really excited, but that also illustrates, frankly, they'd be lucky to have you as well. It's not just that you're excited to work for them, they're lucky to get you. It is an employee's market right now. Companies can't hire quickly enough. So it's a great time to be, looking for a job. It's a great time because that you do have more leverage than in other employment markets, right? So I'm so sorry. I think that's the generator situation. Wow. Linda, sorry, Erin, I'm going to let you pick up from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I hope others who are, either facing negotiations right now, if you have specific questions, it doesn't always exactly tie to poker, but I'd love to try to find the way that it does, because we really do think that in our classes in particular, and we offer 12 one-hour classes, so it's very bite-sized. Women can fit it into their busy schedules, and we do it all virtually, so it's easy. I know we probably have listeners that are across the globe. We have poker players that are part of Poker Power from 27 countries, so we are very, very welcoming to anyone who wants to join us. But one of the things that we know with poker is that you really have to step back from the outcome. And I think it's the same thing with a negotiation, because particularly when it's personal, and it's salary and it's promotion and the things that matter most to us. What Meggie said is absolutely correct. Is you don't actually control the outcome. You can do all the homework, all the preparation. You can have a huge history of success to bring to the discussion, but you don't get to control the outcome. You don't get to make that decision. Poker is very similar. You can play your cards exactly the way that you should. Perfect poker. And there's a little bit of luck that sometimes creeps in, or in this case, bad luck, and you don't win that hand. Similarly, you don't get that promotion. You don't get that advancement and the increase in salary that you were hoping for. What do you do next? Because it's really important that you're thinking through what next, because a no when it comes to a negotiation doesn't mean no forever. I've truly, truly believe that. And I've really told everyone that I've worked with over many years that come back. I'm going to say no to you. There are times when that's just going to happen, but please come back and find a way to continue this discussion. Because the worst thing that happens is in poker, it's called going on tilt. And when you go on tilt, you lose all your emotional control. That is not where you want to be at any point in a negotiation, but particularly when it's ended and you haven't gotten what you thought you should have. What you want to do is reset, write it all down, what went well, what didn't go well, where were you feeling particularly nervous during the interaction, and then come back to it. And what I always remind women is that we are so good at advocating for our children or our favorite charity. Like, we actually are really good at speaking up and being negotiators. We're just sometimes really scared to do it for ourselves. And that's where I want you to find a way to be more courageous. I want you to sit at a poker table if you're willing to do that. There are many other areas in your life where you can just build yourself up and have those small wins that you're then going to start to have a history of having the courage to do something. No matter where you are in your career, your experience, you can always get a little bit more.
And it's not always easy, is it? It's not always easy, Erin, and it's not easy to sit at a poker table for the first time. It's not easy to go for a C-level job opportunity. It's not easy to pick up the phone and call a recruiter if you've never done that. It's scary stuff. And again, the brain doesn't like the unknown. We're okay once we've done it, we get better, but it's hard. The first step is really tough. And it's interesting. I love what Poker Power is doing, because it creates a really safe, supportive community and environment for some of these negotiating strategies to be really put into practice. As I say, in a community that's going to support you through learning those techniques, and they are incredibly transferable. One of the other things I often say to people too is being comfortable hearing something that's uncomfortable, whether that's feedback, constructive feedback, whether that's a no to a raise or a no to a promotion. Getting okay with that is very important, because as you and I know, Erin, it happens in your career, doesn't it? But if you don't ask the question, you don't actually take any baby steps forward.
Right. And the worst thing is not asking. And so it's getting comfortable with, in poker, we call it aggression. Women often, recoil at that word because there's so much negative connotation around it. But it shouldn't be. We should actually get comfortable pushing the chips all in. That's what we want women doing in every situation in their lives, is doing the research, gather the data, know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then when it's the right moment and you're in the right position of strength and your chip stack is high enough, that's when you're going to go all in. And if you can do that in small areas of your life, like a poker table, like, negotiating it, those of you who have never bought a car, I've bought cars a lot now, but I remember really clearly the first time I bought my car and how terrified. I mean, you feel so disempowered in that negotiation. Go do it. And there's something in between, that and that and that and that, and you're going to get the experience that you're ready to go for the ones that really matter. Because we also know that every salary increase you don't get, every comp package that you're leaving on the table, that's going to affect you not just this year, but you're setting your floor. And every year that you're setting your floor low and other people are getting higher, you're widening the gap. And that has to stop. So women do have to ask for more, and they have to ask for more regularly. And they have to get comfortable talking about accomplishments. I know that using the word I can be really, really tough. And we default to we. I find myself correcting my emails still where I'm saying we. It's like, no, it's fucking me. I'm going to write I. And that's what we have to do. We have to take the credit so that we can get the reward.
And you know, the other thing, Erin, about getting comfortable asking the question, yes, buying a car, I think that's a great example. The other thing everyone can do today, literally, I might put a bit of a challenge out there, Erin. This week, I want everyone to call their cell phone company. Call a cell phone company and just say, hey, listen, what can you do about my bill? Like, let's have a chat. I've been with you for a while, or honestly, money's a bit tight right now. What can you do? I'm going to put money on the fact that 9 out of 10 of you are going to come out of that conversation having saved money. Because if you ask the question, you'd be very surprised what these companies will say, right? It's empowering. And again, it's a low consequence environment. It doesn't matter if T-Mobile say no, who cares? Hang up the phone, it's all good. But again, it's teaching yourself and it's starting to build that muscle that it's okay to ask. It's okay to ask the question. You know, the world's not going to stop spinning. And I think that's a really powerful thing for us all to remember.
I think one other point on that, Meggie, is that when you're learning poker and the more that you play it, you start to realize is that there is a complex negotiation going on at the table, because a typical poker table will have 8 or 9 players at it. Not all 8 or 9 of those players will be in every hand. So you're typically in each of the rounds that you're playing, maybe you're playing 3, maybe 4, maybe even just one other person. And so there's this complex thought process that it happens. Like your brain never shuts off when you're trying to play poker with a really well strategized plan of action that you're going to take. Knowing that you need to practice managing all those inputs, managing how you personally are feeling in that moment, that's going to get replicated, whether it's the cell phone company or it's the boss. That's exactly how you're going to feel in those negotiations. It's some people are so highly verbal when they're in a negotiation. Others need to pause. And actually, one of the techniques that we teach at Poker Power is called checking the pre-flop aggressor. And what that means in very simple terms is that you're pausing. You're still in the game, but you're not going to do anything dramatic. You're not going to put any more money into the hand until you gather more information from other players. That's a critical skill that I think can really be a secret weapon for women, because so often we feel like we have to respond immediately to that email, to the question that our boss just asked us in a meeting, when in fact, it's okay to check, gather more information, and then come back for the next round. I personally have found that to be one of my greatest learnings in learning the game of poker, is that I don't have to have every answer at every moment.
Yeah, it's so true. And the power of the pause, Erin. This is something my fiance actually taught me. We were driving in a car once when he was negotiating a salary, and it was on speakerphone, and I happened to be in the car, and I was so
a woman would never do that.
listening to how he handled it, and basically he threw out a number and just said nothing. I would have said, back then, this is a long time ago, obviously, a lot more experience now, but I would have said, this is the number that I want. But obviously, I'm going to work really hard. And obviously, I'll be working on weekends and blah, blah. And it was interesting. Not everyone does that. There's actually power in saying your piece and being comfortable sitting in the silence. Let the other person feel the dead air if they have to, right? Like there's no shame in pause. And also, Erin, I think to your point, sometimes you have a conversation and it's a disaster. It goes really badly. Job interview, conversation with your boss, things get heated. You can take a pause. You can say, hey, listen, why don't we circle back? Or I'd love to take a quick bathroom break. Why don't we, meet back in the meeting room in 5 minutes? Or you can even, after the meeting is over, there's nothing wrong with sending an email saying, listen, I realized afterwards there's a couple of points I missed, and I just really wanted to communicate those to you in an email so that you had that as part of your decision-making process. Would it have been better to stay in the room? Probably. But can you salvage things somewhat afterwards? Absolutely. You can give it a red hot go. There's no shame in that. And don't feel like you can't. I think often we feel, oh no, the interview's over, that's it, it's done. My boss said no, that's it, it's done. But to your point, Erin, it's a no is not a no forever. It's a not right now. And I love one of my friends. She always talks about rejection is just redirection, right? So it's redirecting you potentially, to have another conversation tomorrow, in 6 weeks, in 6 months, something like that. So this is a really interesting comment from Sasha, Erin, saying silent women are incredibly powerful on the felt and in negotiations. I love that. I love that analogy. That's really great.
Yeah, the woman you can't figure out at the poker table. A quick story is that I have only just started playing in person, partly because of COVID, but also I was terrified, as anyone who's new to the game. And so I was not a lifelong poker player. I learned to play poker with the Poker Power curriculum and our phenomenal teachers that we have, who are all female and all experts in poker. But one of the things that we know is that it's getting that courage and that ability to not show anything, that it is actually okay to sit at a poker table and be completely stone-faced. And so when I played my first tournament with all women, and we don't have enough of those, but we do have tournaments that are truly just women who play, I actually found that to be more challenging than I did when I typically play at a table that is 8 men and me. I tend to find that I'm able to, work that table much more easily than I can work the table with 8 other women, largely because they are doing the poker face. They are not giving it away. But at the same time, there's this warmth, there's this acceptance. Like I was making some very rookie mistakes at the table, and they are going to be the ones that are going to help me. They're still going to beat me, but they are going to help me. And so knowing how to use your different expressions and your different strengths, given the situation that you're in, can be incredibly powerful to negotiate with.
I love that. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we're going to wrap up in a second. If you've got any final questions, send them through. We do have one here, which I think is a great question about researching your market value. So again, it comes back to preparation, right? And being very clear on the landscape of what you're walking into. So there's a great website, the H-1B visa website is helpful, up-to-date information for those of you living in North America. The other thing that I would really encourage you to do, and love your thoughts on this, Erin, is have conversations with people about money. Poker is obviously a great way to sort of facilitate that because we're putting bets on the table, but also openly discussing salary with people who you trust and respect. So your bestie at work, a colleague, a sponsor potentially. And also I want to make sure that you've got people in your circle who identify as male, because we know the gender pay gap means that those of us who identify as female are likely going to be paid less, and potentially our salary expectations will be less. So I want you to have some guys in your circle that you can talk to about cash, just so that you can sort of level set your expectations potentially based on their salary expectations. One of the things I like to say to people is when you're talking about money, it's a bit awkward if you say, hey, Chad, how much money do you earn? As opposed to if you say, hey, Chad, I'm applying for a marketing director role. I was thinking I might ask for 80 to 100K. Does that feel about right for you? And then Chad can say, absolutely. I used to get 100 plus bonus, or Chad can say, I never earned more than 70 in that industry. So good luck. It kind of gives people a bit of a jumping off point for them to share what they're comfortable with. So love your thoughts on this as well, Erin.
Absolutely. Women have to know. They have to know their market value, and they have to know what everyone else is getting as best as you can. And I always reflect back, and this is a story from 20 years ago, but I was a young banker on Wall Street, and I was receiving my first bonus. And on Wall Street, when you're a banker, your bonus is the most significant part of your compensation, and you work all year for it. And then bonus day comes and you get your number, and you go in a one-on-one meeting with your boss, and he delivers the number. So when I got my number, it was a big number for me. Remember, I was coming from thinking I was going to be a writer, less than 10 years ago. And I just said, thank you. I said, thank you very much. I'm so grateful. I didn't ask a single question. I didn't pause. I just took the money and walked out. This is at a time in banking where we had pay secrecy rules. So you are not allowed to share your number. That's loosening up across all industries, which is wonderful. And even in New York, I believe, we're moving to a part where you're actually going to be able to post what salaries are. But it was very chagrining to me, to say the least, is that I did find out what some colleagues made. And I did find out that I was significantly underpaid for men who were in equal positions, equal experience, equal number of clients. We basically were apples to apples. And when I asked one of them, I said, well, how did you get so much more? And he said, well, I asked. And he said, well, I asked in like the most obvious way. Like, of course he asked. And for me, I remember it like it was yesterday, because it was a punch in the gut of, oh my gosh, I thought I was so smart, and I'm just finding out how stupid I am because I didn't ask.
Yeah.
But two, I've never done that again. I have, I'm so grateful that happened to me, because it happened in early in a career, which is good. But it also happened so that I could realize, like, I'm not in the flow of information. I don't know things that everyone else apparently seems to know in my area of business. And I got to figure this out. So as harsh as it was to learn, the hard way, I'm so grateful I did. And I've told, thousands of women since then that you have to ask. Whatever number you're given, whatever package it is, you always have to ask again for more. If they say no, they say no.
I love that. They say no, exactly. The world does not stop spinning. And it's also very powerful when you have a plan B, right? When you have an alternative, it allows you to ask with a little more power and confidence, because the option, is not going to mean that you're on the breadline, right? If you've got another opportunity, it gives you more leverage in that situation. Erin, this has been such a good conversation. I'm so excited to get to meet up IRL when it's COVID safe to do so we can play an actual game together. That. We would love to invite everyone on the call at some point. Yeah, so we're going to be in touch, and we'll make sure that we reach out to all of y'all and let you know what that could look like. But make sure, if you're not already, check out the amazing work that Poker Power are doing. They're on social media. They've got an amazing website with really awesome classes that support you to learn the techniques of poker. And hopefully you've learned from what Erin and I have spoken about today, how you can actually transfer those skills into your career and the workplace as well. So please reach out to Erin and I. We are both on LinkedIn. We are both on Instagram. Poker Power is on Instagram. So is PepTalkHer. We would love to stay in touch with you. And we are just delighted to have had this conversation. We're going to circulate a replay for everyone so that you can catch up or circulate this to friends or colleagues. Any final words, Erin, before we wrap up for today?
I would just say to everyone who's listening that everything that you think about poker, if there are any negative stereotypes, any intimidation you have about the game, I want you to know that 2 years ago, I was in exactly the same spot. And I can tell you that during COVID, the very best thing I did, one was to get to run this company, but two is that I now know how to play poker. And I know it's going to be transformational for the rest of my life, for my daughter's lives who now play poker. And I want each of you to benefit from that.
And we want all of you to ask the question. So I want you all to ring your cell phone provider. That's one small baby step you can take, and just get comfortable, asking things that maybe previously would have made you feel uncomfortable. And we really hope that you can take that skill into your salary conversation to ask for a pay raise. There's never been a better time. Also, keep an eye on inflation. It's pretty bananas right now. So you really need to be getting a pay raise now more than ever, because the cost of living is going up, up, and up. This has been an absolute pleasure. Erin, thank you so much for your time. And we are so excited to continue partnering with Poker Power and hopefully get on the felt in person with the chips on the table sometime soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Meggie. Thank you, everyone who joined us.
Thanks, y'all. Really appreciate it. See you later. Thanks, everyone. Bye.